Alright, so it's best we start the video by prefacing our intentions and stance regarding Attack on Titan's ending in chapter 139. The other video we produced was objectively explaining everything for those that needed to understand what unfolded, but in this video, I'll break down our opinion. This is the most split I have ever seen any fandom of any piece of media, be it a TV show, anime, manga, or a movie. But despite the controversial chapter, I ask everyone to please be respectful. I'm not interested in causing any strife, rather we would like to create an open debate with you watching the video right now. If you end up agreeing with the video, I know we can't make a difference at all, or it's not, who am I to make a difference, right? But please make sure to share this video with your friends and social media with the hashtag release the Isayama cut, because I guess that's one way of letting him know we want the original version and ending, just like Zack Snyder had enough support with the Justice League. Everything starts with a spark, right? You never know, we might get the original ending Isayama intended, where he didn't change it just because Attack on Titan got popular, where he admitted himself, oh my god, Attack on Titan is so popular, I need to change the ending. Now, whatever corner of the fandom you're coming from to watch the video, try and keep an open mind. Don't just come here and call us illiterate for critiquing something or stating that we just don't understand the themes of AOT and leave. You're allowed to have an opinion. This is the North Korea, bruh. We are all going through the 5 stages of grief. Some of us have gone through it multiple times already, with the finale to a beloved manga that we have followed and invested into for a decade. Other members of our team at ABD, Hunter and Immorality, will be joining me in covering the many plot inconsistencies, character assassinations, and objectively bad writing that Isayama has created with Attack on Titan's ending in chapter 139. I would also like to give credit to those that helped us produce this. Their links will be in the description. Also, please check out Hunter's YouTube channel in this collaboration. We know we aren't the only ones that have felt this ending was rushed and created problems, because I asked all of you on the community tab of our channel regarding the issues we have. I will be addressing a lot of the points you have made, so thank you for sharing your opinion with me. If you're watching this video from the future, where the anime made changes or made sense of things with new revelations, then that's great, I commend that. But we are exclusively talking about the manga ending here. With that said, this is going to be quite a long video, and it took me a whole week non-stop writing it, so go get some snacks, because we're gonna be here for quite a while. Before I dive deep, I need you to understand the perspective by putting yourselves in the shoes of the people that felt upset and betrayed by Attack on Titan's ending and Eren's confession in chapter 139. The message and themes of Attack on Titan are pretty clear to readers of any comprehension. There is no way to deny the fact that Attack on Titan explores the themes on the horrors of war, freedom, racial injustice, slavery, oppression, nationalism, the generational responsibilities, and many more themes. Attack on Titan is an emotional roller coaster that has many key moments which capture a reality we can see in the real world. Isayama created a world where the reader could envision the world that Attack on Titan is and imagine to themselves, what if this was our world? This is due to the high levels of realism incorporated into the story, which results in readers investing into the story of Attack on Titan emotionally to a higher degree compared to other manga. Attack on Titan embodies the history of mankind, which we cannot erase, but as Eren puts it, we as the human race keep moving forward, away from these mistakes so that the future generations don't repeat these same problems. We as humans have all experienced problems within our lives which at one point chained us down or made us live through insufferable times, where we asked ourselves, is there a possibility of me getting out of this situation and achieving my goal? Is there a sense of freedom from this pain I suffer? I, for one, definitely have come to that point in my life where I felt this way multiple times, where I felt like achieving my dream was a deluded goal and there was no such thing as freedom in this messed up world, where it's built not to satisfy the needs of me and you who are in it. There aren't enough words that I can express how deeply the world is burning and suffering in today's day and age. What we all view on the news makes us shiver in fear. For example, the mistreatment of Muslims in China, the oppression in Hong Kong, the racial divide in America, the constant surveillance of humans where we lose more of our privacy and rights as the years go by. This system of division makes it harder for you and me to live our lives as people with freedom. Peace and freedom is a question, and the only answer is truly unity. That's why I'm not even mad at the Zero Requiem ending, and to be fair, we all predicted it. The main problem is the way it was represented, and it was kinda rushed. Now, even in reality, we have heard stories in World War I where both opposing sides chose not to fight and had moments of peace, like having Christmas dinner together, where we saw the humanity in these soldiers shining through the darkness of war. The scene where Eren speaks to Falco in Mali regarding this aspect we all share was so inspirational when it comes to getting through all the nonsense life throws at all of us. Eren became a character we have all been at one point of our lives, and we could understand the extreme drive he had for freedom by leaving the past behind and creating a new path for himself. In some weird way, we can all understand and sympathize with Eren despite the horrendous atrocities he commits in the later parts of Attack on Titan, because he desires what we all want: freedom from fear and conflict, allowing everyone to look forward to having a future that wouldn't be taken away by someone else's random act of violence. This is what I and many others saw in Eren. However, in chapter 139, it renders all of this redundant, as it was predestined fate and Eren didn't follow his own will, but rather just the path Ymir Fritz set out for him, where he was pretending as he walked forward without ever knowing the end result he was going to produce. This is a complete slap in the face of everyone that emotionally invested in Eren's character and the story of Attack on Titan. I am going to break this down further, but what I'm trying to say is every single epic moment and meaningful interaction that Eren had has now been diluted within an instance of reading the ending, which is a tough pill to swallow. This is because chapter 139 is now the skeleton of the whole show. Isayama introduced time travel, and it's the biggest chain that all other chapters now connect to. The other chapters are now the meat and muscle. However, with a collapsed skeleton, you're bound to find cracks within the bones. Now, I hope at this point of the video you have understood why the ending hurt a lot of people, but let's cover the core of Eren's character and break down how this was shattered. Hunter will now cover this part.
Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Mr. Hunter, and I'm a friend/editor for ABD. I make my own content on Attack on Titan, and honestly on whatever, and I'll be voicing half of this video with Adil today. So don't worry, he will be back. I'm just gonna do this part and a few of the other ones. So one of the things that Attack on Titan did in this last chapter was ruin Eren Yeager, and to explain this, we'll first need to cover what makes Eren Yeager as a character. Eren has deep-rooted ideals in fighting everything that tries to hold him down, as we see him many times not going along with things he doesn't agree with. Levi confirms this in chapter 25 as he calls Eren a true monster. Not because of his Titan powers though, but rather he was saying that Eren wouldn't stand down. The one time he did go along with something he didn't want to do, it resulted in the entire Levi squad dying, and Eren had a hard time forgiving himself for that, which, you know, I don't blame him. I miss you, Petra. From the very moment his mother died, he sought revenge on those that killed his mom. This also goes into play with the sheer amount of anger that Eren shows throughout the series, as we all know in the first few seasons that his character is introduced as someone who thinks through his emotions, not necessarily through logic. To originally avenge his mother, he wanted to kill all of the Titans, which was his main goal for the first few seasons. He accomplishes his goal by killing all the Titans on Paradis, but he realized these Titans were not the ones keeping them trapped inside the walls. These Titans were just a way for Marley to oppress the Paradisian Eldians. It's very clear from the moment he kisses Historia's hand that his personality changes a lot, and his levels of anger and distress rise astronomically. He realizes the entire rest of the world hated them in the past, and that they'll only be free if they probably kill everybody outside of Paradis. It is because of this that his character harbors revenge towards no single person, but towards the entire rest of the world, since the entire world hates the island he was born in, something he really didn't have control over. Which this links back to the motive of I was born into this world, since no one can choose where they're from, but they should be given their equal rights anyways. The world refers to Eren and his people as island devils, and there is deep-rooted fear all around the globe of the island people coming to kill everyone. This is what led them to eventually attack the walls to try to take the founding Titan. Eren sees that these things haven't changed when he goes to visit Marley, and there they are preaching about how the island is their enemy, and they're getting ready to plan another attack in the future. This is when he realizes there is no hope for the outside world at all, and that they will always live in fear and hatred of his people. This belief of his is shown in chapter 130, as Eren says he's going to destroy all these animals on this earth as he leads hundreds of colossal Titans into Marley. We see the first instance of his deep-seated hatred in his attack against Marley back at the very beginning of season 4. It's in this conversation that Eren talks to Reiner about why a Titan had to eat his mom as a way of guilt-tripping Reiner, but there's going to be more on that later. He tells Reiner that he will keep moving forward to destroy all of his enemies. He then transforms, kills hundreds of people, and eats the Warhammer Titan. He single-handedly leads a terrorist attack on Liberia without getting the approval of his friends initially, and he really seems to be enjoying it. It's very clear from his attack on Liberia that his hatred that he held for the Titans has been redirected to everyone in the rest of the world outside of Paradis. The oppressors had now become the oppressed. This can be reaffirmed through chapter 131, as we see Eren above the clouds and reverted to a child, calling the rumbling freedom. These panels suggest that Eren has reverted to his childhood mindset of hatred and rage, and he is finally fulfilling his childhood desires. This is later followed up when we see him talking about his mom being eaten, which some try to argue as him wanting to eliminate the Titan, but he only wants to get revenge for his mother, and he has stated many times that he sought revenge through those that killed his mom. He even says it in this chapter in an inner monologue, so this can't be a facade, as this is an inner monologue of his. He's not talking to anybody but himself. It is so easy to see how angry Eren as a character is after this, and chapter 121 as a whole is a great depiction of his anger. He makes probably one of the most terrifying faces out of any character in this manga, filled to the absolute brim with rage as he forces his dad to eat Frida and kill the Rice family. He even watches in anger as his dad reunites with Zeke, and later goes on to say he saw his future self and other things when he kills Historia's hand, and he decides to say it was a sight to see with a happy look on his face. The one reason for bringing all this up is that people suggest Eren was always the way he is in chapter 139, and that he's always been a baby and a simp. However, this just is not the case. This is ridiculous. We have watched as Eren's character has gone from an emotional baby to someone that uses their emotions to reach and achieve their goals, and his unbridled anger has grown throughout the series. We as an audience literally watch as Eren in the paths has a resolve that is so strong, he defies and breaks the authority that holds Zeke over Ymir. Ymir is known to only obey the royal family, but here she ignores Zeke, and Eren convinces her to trust and work with him, which has been unheard of for like 2,000 years. Eren is heavily goal-oriented as a person and uses his intense emotions such as rage to fuel his work. He tells Zeke in chapter 121 that if anyone tries to take away his freedom, he will not hesitate at all to take away theirs. He's been this way since birth, which refers to when he killed those that kidnapped Mikasa. He even remembers himself murdering 2 men as a child and says that they deserved it, reinforcing this idea of his rage against humanity. With this logic, the current Eren and his actions post-time skip aren't a facade, as this follows Eren's core beliefs that he's had since birth. He's taking away the world's freedom for trying to take away his freedom, which refers to the world isolating them on Paradis and making them live like cattle per se. It is especially because of this that it seems incredibly hard to believe that after striving for freedom his entire life, he reveals in the last chapter that he was a slave to destiny this entire time, and he followed the path that was already laid out for him. Is this meant to be dramatic irony, as Eren was never free at all, or is this an attempt at changing the story last minute? On the topic of fate, Eren following destiny is actually a contradiction to one of his earlier conversations in chapter 130 and chapter 133. He says in these chapters that he won't let fate decide Paradis' future, even claiming this to his friends in the paths. Yet Eren follows the path Ymir set out for him, which, knowing what that result will be, he let fate decide the future of Paradis and himself. Another core part of Eren's character is how he's always cared deeply about those around him, which goes tongue-in-cheek with him being an emotional person. A good example of this is when Eren says he doesn't want any of his friends to inherit his Titan, because he wants them to live long and happy lives. This can also be applied to the table scene when he tries to push Armin and Mikasa away from him. Eren doesn't want those he cares about to get involved with the rumbling because he wants them to survive. Eren has grown a hell of a lot as a character, and this is in no way a facade. No person with the mentality of a child would be able to spread his ideology across a nation and inspire a militia. No person with the mentality of a child would be able to defy and break the rules of a royal family with the founding Titan that has lasted for centuries. No person with the mentality of a child would be able to free several millennia old demigod from her chains and show her what it's like to have free will. And no person with the mentality of a child would be able to go through with protecting his friends and family while knowing he would be the cause of the end of the world. Eren, being led by his emotions and hatred, leads him to commit a completely selfish act as he decides to guarantee the absolute safety of Paradis by killing the entire rest of the world. Upon activating the rumbling, he says, quote, "My goal is to protect the people of Paradis, who bore and raised me, but the world desires the extinction of the people of Paradis. Over countless years, this hatred has grown beyond this island. They surely will not stop until they have killed every one of the subjects of Ymir. I reject that desire. These titans of the wall will thunder across the world, to every land beyond this island. Their rumbling will snuff out every life of those lands." It's this coupled with a conversation he had with Historia that grounds how strong his resolve is to kill the world. This conversation between the two happens in chapter 130, where Historia tells him that not everyone in the world is their enemy, and they would die like Eren's mom did. Eren says that he knows that, but the only way to put the end to the cycle of hatred is to bury that history and put the civilization that created it deep in the ground. Eren is not talking about the curse of Ymir or the Titans, but the entire rest of the world itself. Eren is seeking revenge on the world for killing his mother, and for creating this cycle of hatred that has lasted for so long. As mentioned by Eren Kruger, the owl, the attack titan is the key to ending the cycle of hatred. However, Eren is going through with this due to his selfish desires that he admits himself in chapter 131. Eren had a deep fascination with the outside world when he was a child because of those books Armin showed him, but he tells Ramsay when he learned about what humanity was really like outside of the walls, he was disappointed. He was disappointed because instead of a land filled with freedom and all types of opportunities, the outside world only wished for the death of him and his people. We know he isn't a heartless monster though, as we see him crying for Sasha as she died, and him apologizing to Ramsay since he knows Ramsay will perish. As we said earlier, he went to Marley with the rest of his friends to look for any hope so that they didn't have to do the rumbling. Eren even calls himself a half-hearted piece of shit, but then he states, "No, I'm even worse than that." He says this because he knows he's going to go through with a full rumbling, and he knows what Reiner went through when he had to invade the walls because he's going to do it himself. Eren reasons with himself, and he contemplates his decision very heavily. He contemplated the world majority over that of Paradisma's minority, and he rejected it because he wanted his island and his people on it to survive and to be free. Eren knows he has to kill the world, but he understands that there are good-hearted people in it, as we see him telling Reiner before his attack on Marley. He knows there will be innocent lives lost due to the rumbling, just like how his mom died to the attack on the walls, but Eren has to keep moving forward. A large portion of the fandom says that anyone who calls Eren a bad character or says that he was ruined means we did not understand him. They suggest we think Eren's character was just a genocidal maniac, but he was nowhere near close. Eren was a man that was so desperate to see those that he cared about get long, happy lives. He was so desperate, in fact, that he was willing to stomp over the entire world to ensure the safety of those people. This creates an interesting dichotomy of his selfish desires with selfless ones, because he cares so deeply for the people around him, and he feels so much remorse for his actions in having to kill people. However, Eren knows he has to do it. He has to keep moving forward. This is what makes him so interesting, and what makes chapter 139 a total insult to his character development. It starts in the second page of the final chapter, as Eren says he directed the hate of the world onto himself. This confirms our Zero Requiem theory we've had for a really long time, where he would make the Alliance appear as heroes to bring humanity together. However, I will like to admit that our Zero Requiem theory is contradicted a little bit by a conversation Eren initially had with Commander Pixis at the beginning of the series. Commander Pixis asks him what he thought about a legend where he said the world stopped fighting to come together to fight a gigantic threat. Eren himself says that this ideology is stupid, and he outright rejects it ever being possible. With this logic, on top of the fact that Eren has not really shown that he wanted people to kill him to become heroes, that him deciding to suddenly become a Marty doesn't make too much sense considering all of his ideology. So this page of Eren saying he wanted to be the enemy of humanity doesn't align with his original goals or ideals very much. I've seen many people attempt to argue that Eren was a kid when he said humanity coming together to eliminate a big bad was dumb, and that his ideals could change. However, these are the same people that use post-timeskip Eren being a facade as an argument to him going against his original ideal. This in turn suggests that Eren in 139 is also a facade of himself, since he goes against what he originally believed in his conversation with Pixis, and against many of his core beliefs as a character. The next page of the final chapter goes even further, as Eren says the rumbling will only kill off 80% of the world. We already know this to be a direct contradiction to his actions earlier, as he explained to the entire Eldian race through the past to himself in an inner monologue in chapter 131, and to Historia that he always intended to go through with a full-scale rumbling. That way he would rid the world of the cycle of hatred instead of it tenuing once again in chapter 139. This also goes against his belief that Paradis will only be safe once the rest of the world is gone, and he knows the outside world will always hate them and want to kill them. Eren leaving 20% of the population alive makes absolutely no sense, and doesn't align with his objectives at all that we've seen, and this intentionally leaves Paradis at risk of the other 20% of the world uprising to kill them. There is no way, realistically, that any surviving life on the world would not passionately hate Paradis and the Eldians for killing literally almost all of humanity. We learned throughout Attack on Titan that Paradis has a population around 1 million. With 20% of the world still being alive, this could possibly mean hundreds of millions of people. They could easily overpower Paradis. This is on top of the fact that Paradis is 50 years behind in terms of technology. Realistically, Eren at max has only bought Paradis about a decade before the rest of the world tries to attack them. We see the Eldians preparing for war, and it is quoted that they fear an uprising of the rest of the world as they grow their military. This clearly suggests Eren did not do his job of guaranteeing their safety, which was his literal entire goal and reason for doing the rumbling. This in turn makes the entire rumbling feel really pointless, since he never achieved his goal. One could argue he even created a fascist society since they scream his ideals regarding the war. They state, if we win, we live. If we lose, we die. If we don't fight, we can't win. Eren is seen as a martyr after killing millions of people, rather than a villain.
So now that we have established the core principles of what makes Eren's character, and a few criticisms here and there which are pretty valid, let's continue with one of the most controversial parts of this chapter. In my opinion, it's when Armin asks Eren why he did the rumbling. Eren tells Armin that he didn't know why he did it, but he just felt that he had to. This again contradicts everything Eren stands for as a character. He strove for freedom and to see the world in Armin's book. Eren clearly had goals. We knew them, and he even repeated them multiple times himself, which were to exact revenge on those who brought about the death of his mother, to fight back against those who truly hold him down, to pursue freedom, and to protect his friends and home. Why didn't Eren break this down for the readers and Armin? Because chapter 139 suggests Eren never had any goals, and that he just killed millions of people on the world because he had to. Think about it. The story now amounts to Eren killing his brother, father, mother, and 80% of the world for his friends that he knew for a couple of years. This, coupled with everything else discovered previously, is outright character assassination. In chapter 133, Eren even goes as far to tell them that he's there to talk to them to let them know that he has nothing to say to them. Yet we find out in 139, he lied. He apparently visited them all in the paths from chapter 131, and they don't realize it because he altered their memories. Eren has always been a character that is true to his words and follows through with the things to the end. Eren lying and doing things he says he wouldn't contradicts previous actions of his. In fact, Isayama, the creator of Attack on Titan, agrees with this opinion, and he himself admitted in 2017 in a weekly shonen magazine when he was asked what is Isayama sensei's ideal character like. Quoting him, he said, "Someone who does not lie. From the story's circumstances, to lie means the character twisted his or her original will and resolve. I find the most appealing are those who operate according to their resolve, as well as those who are the metaphorication would say rise up against the entire world. On the contrary, I feel that characters who become pawns of the storyline are unattractive. Often the main character will give up on their original goals due to the story's development, so those who stand opposite of him or her can become more fascinating. The most interesting characters are those who operate according to their resolve and rise up against the entire world." So let's look at that key moment he just stated. Isayama is basically speaking about Eren, yet he contradicted everything in chapter 139, his own beliefs. Since we learn Eren did lie to everyone, he didn't have the intention to do the full rumbling at all, and he wanted to stop at 80%. On top of all of this, he was the pawn all along, with predestined fate and a path he created himself that he followed by Ymir. This is what Isayama hates most about a character, yet that's how he butchered his main character. I don't know, man, it doesn't make any sense to me, seriously.
That don't make no sense.
Eren being the symbol of freedom and hope that he himself admitted he would strive to become for Paradise has been butchered into an irony that we are all slaves to that ideal. As Kenny Ackerman puts it, every human is a slave to something, and we are all drunk on it, and that's what keeps us moving forward. Eren was a slave to his selfish desire of freedom, but this is contradictory yet again, since Eren never had the intention to complete the full rumbling. He wanted to make his friends live long happy lives and make them the saviors of the world that would enjoy the freedom he would never experience. Therefore, he was never really a true slave to his own desire. He was a liar to himself, which Isayama stated he hates about a character. We are to believe that freedom is an illusion, and Eren is an ironic clown. The mother that gave birth to Eren, Carla, she was this selfless woman that loved him very much. She is the one that revitalized his life and told him he is special because he was born into this world. Eren takes on this mantra and uses it to justify how he wants to create this ideal for everyone that remains in the world after the rumbling. Everyone has the right to real freedom rather than living in constant hatred and fear of the Titans. However, the phrase that emotionally impacted all of us in such an intense manner as it applies to the real world and all of us, it has been completely shattered. I was born into this world has been morphed into the idea that death is liberation from one's existence. What makes it worse is that we learn Eren and Ymir were the direct cause of his own mother's death. This was a cheap shock value that was entirely unnecessary, since Dina's Titan was already an abnormal Titan that would act differently. Dina already had the writing and foreshadowing because she claimed she would follow her husband Grisha no matter what before she changed into the abnormal. The storytelling was already there as to why she ignored Berthold, and it made sense since she held onto the resolve before she changed. What was the point of making Eren the cause of his own mother's death and destiny? Because that only only regressed his character even further. One could argue it was because he needed the resolve and extra motivation to be the chosen one. But again, this is a tragic irony that he caused his own terrible life. Wasn't the Titans and killing all these monsters and all this shit enough for this dude?
No!
This is because logically speaking, Eren didn't even need to have this destiny. He has no right to be angry at his father anymore for giving him his fate since he himself caused it. When Eren says I don't know and just went with the flow, imagine Batman discovering that he himself killed his own parents that made him go through the pain to become Batman. Imagine Luffy from One Piece stating that he didn't care about One Piece and becoming the Pirate King at the end of the manga. He just did it. Imagine Naruto saying he really didn't want to become Hokage. He just lied to himself to motivate him. Now, as I said earlier, chapter 139 has now become the skeleton to the entire story due to time travel. Now, when we read chapter 1 and look at the events, the knowledge we have gained has now made everything ironic as we are not ignorant anymore. Imagine a canvas of art being colored by the artist. Your view of the art will now be completely different from the person that saw the original draft and the non-colored version, right?
Yes, yes!
One could argue with the reveal of 139, more time was spent on misdirecting the fans than the actual plot, so the plot twist could be more shocking and hurtful to us, which was Isayama's original intention. I don't know if he tunnel visioned on this aspect. You must consider that Eren has always showcased his brutal side even at a young age when he murdered 2 men at 9 years old. With the events of the finale, it tries to portray a tormented teen, but it comes across jarring when we consider the amount of rage he had based on his circumstances and goals. I don't think anyone is even upset about Mikasa x Eren being canon at all, because I am not at all, don't get me wrong. This isn't the point. The point is that the manga was rushed and it did not represent this shit properly at all. AOT had taken the story too far into one direction, making this one come so out of left field. Isayama himself said that the show Breaking Bad is a masterpiece because it had a conclusive ending that tied all the loose ends, making for a perfect ending. However, he somehow decided to end Attack on Titan with an open ending that is open to interpretation. What I find interesting from this interview that is available on YouTube, there is some copium for you guys. We can have some hopium, some copium, guys. I'm dishing this shit out because in this video, Isayama explains that there are changes that take place before the manga even gets animated, and he even replies to Demetrius's question that the anime will have original content regarding Ymir Fritz to make sense of everything more than it did in the manga. Anyways, moving on to our next point. Eren in chapter 139 explains to Armin that his mind has become messed up. This is because the past, present and future has now become one, resulting in Eren not having control of himself properly. Isayama used this writing plot device to try and make Eren's decision more believable to the readers. However, unfortunately, it has created a contradiction in the story. If Eren's mind was messed up to this degree, as he mentions, he wouldn't be able to act as a normal person in reality. Like, he acted pretty cohesively and normal in all of the arcs when the power was unlocked. A great analogy would be Satoru Gojo's domain expansion in Jujutsu Kaisen. It creates a metaphysical space that causes the victims to receive all kinds of stimuli and information endlessly, restraining their thought process and actions. This was what practically Eren was experiencing. Chapter 121 contradicts Eren's excuse in 139, because if you read that chapter again, Eren forced his father to kill the Reese family. He shows competent control over the Attack Titan power, as Zeke and Grisha both confirmed that Eren doesn't show his father everything or certain memories. Zeke asks Eren why does he not want to end the conflict, why is he doing the rumbling, where he states, I am just me, I always have been, whilst Eren is remembering his dream with his friends and killing the men, implying that he has ruthless rage and yearning for freedom. At this point, he is making sound decisions and thinking to himself. He is not saying this stuff out loud at all. The visual imagery keeps telling the reader to believe that Eren isn't a slave or have a destiny, that he himself is making these choices for an end result that he wants. Eren then states to Zeke Yeager that I guess you thought the two of us were the same, but you're wrong. If someone tries to steal my freedom away, I won't hesitate to take theirs. Our father didn't make me that way, but have always been like this since birth. Eren is clearly stating with a sound mind that he isn't following a path set by Ymir Fritz and is using his own free will. Eren can lie to the characters, that's perfectly fine if you want the ending of 139 to make sense, but why is Eren lying to the readers? How can he make this all a ruse? Why is he acting in his own mind. That does not make any sense. If he is lying to the readers, that's just poor writing, especially since Eren keeps speaking in first sentence in his brain, where he states, "I wish this to Halil." And in chapter 133, he even stated it to the gang in the paths, "I won't let fate decide the future of Paradise, and I will keep moving forward." However, in the end, he did just that. How ironic is that? When we find out the events of chapter 139 and how Eren is the most pathetic of all, where even Armin is calling him out on it, guys. What gives Eren the right to be angry at his father and Zeke even? This is contradictory, because he even goes on to call Zeke a man who can only define himself through his continued denial of his father's wish to restore Paradise, and he calls Zeke a loser. But it seems like Eren Yeager is just projecting everything. He is actually talking about himself. Eren is the one that killed his mother and caused his own bootstrap paradox, so he shouldn't be mad at his father at all, as he is the cause of his own tragedy, thus making him seem like a bigger loser in the end. And I know you may argue, well, it wasn't Eren that killed his own mother. The official translations make it seem as though it was Ymir Fritz. Well, that just proves even more that he had a destiny. He was just being a bitch to Ymir Fritz and she was controlling him. Anyways, I guess what I'm trying to say is, how did Eren perfectly show all the events of his father's life and the past to Zeke in chapter 121 and 122 if he wasn't in control and he wasn't sane at the time, because time was all at once? If that was the case, he shouldn't have such precision in showing certain memories to convince Grisha to give the attack titan and the founding titan to him, because we learned that Eren somehow convinced Grisha to do this, and he manipulated him by only showing certain memories that benefited him, which again proves that Eren is in control of his memories and time perfectly when the story needs it to be so. However, in 139, he contradicts it, saying he was a mess and didn't know what he was doing. Grisha even tells Zeke Yeager to make sure to stop Eren. He regrets listening to him because he has seen that Eren's plan is bad. This makes everything we fell in love with about Eren and the things he said in the past arcs all meaningless and hollow, since he was just a slave and didn't really know what he was doing. In fact, the story even makes fun out of Eren's idea in chapter 139 regarding his intentions. In Jean's point of view, we were told that he believes Eren is going ahead with his full rumbling plan, and he partly could understand why. This is because he comes to the conclusion that the world's hatred for us won't disappear overnight. We'll have to keep facing it for decades. To stop Eren would be to destroy the island. But the last time we looked for a possible solution like that, we ran out of time and we're still empty-handed. That's why Eren decided to wipe out the rest of the world. So as you can see, even the characters in this own goddamn manga are admitting that chapter 139 doesn't really make sense logically, because it was never going to end conflict at all, and Eren should have just completed the full rumbling if he intended to solve all their problems. 80% would just amount to more hatred for them, as they indeed would just be the devil in their eyes. Now, whilst we're still on the topic of Zeke, let's talk about how Zeke's death stopping the rumbling does not make any sense. Both Eren and Zeke worked as catalysts for the rumbling. However, Eren freed Ymir back in the realm of the paths, which again serves to regress Ymir later on. But regardless, the rumbling was what Eren wanted, but it wasn't his choice. Ymir chose to destroy the world out of her own violation. She has no need for the royal blood within Zeke, since logically speaking at that point, Eren and Ymir was all that was needed for the rumbling. You can use the argument that Ymir wasn't free at that point because of the whole thing about her falling in love with the one who enslaved her, but you can absolutely not deny that it was definitely her choice to start the rumbling. She has the power to do something without the royal blood. This was a symbolic moment of her breaking from her chains and finally being liberated from her work. So killing Zeke should do absolutely nothing, since all he was doing was serving as a point of contact with Ymir and Eren. His job to start the rumbling was finished, and Eren got the full powers of the founding titan, and we even saw him become the colossal. He should be able to lead the rumbling on his own. Even when he is separated from the hallucigenia in chapter 138, he turns into the colossal, a titan he would not be able to turn into without the power of the founding titan. Either he got it from the founding titan, or that's just another unexplained plot hole at how he gained another titan form, fam. No matter how you twist it or turn it, Zeke dying and stopping the rumbling creates plot inconsistencies, or we must create headcanon to fix the writing, which points out how objectively bad it was. This revelation diluted Zeke's character quite a lot, because now we have to believe that Zeke was causing the rumbling this whole time and chose not to stop it. He decided not to stop it when his father Grisha apologized to him in 123 and told Zeke to stop Eren. Even if he's destined to get what he wants, in this huge touching moment that made us cry, Zeke could have sacrificed himself then and then, just like he did in chapter 137, to stop 80% of humanity dying and foiling Eren's plan. Instead, what we got, and what we have to believe, is that Zeke stopped the rumbling because Armin showed him a leaf.
A leaf! A fucking leaf!
And did the ultimate talk Nejutsu even more powerful than Naruto's, just as he always does. You get what I'm trying to say? Bruh.
With Attack on Titan's ending, Mikasa's vision from chapter 138, in a way, has become something really shrouded in mystery. It's very strange how something that was meant to be a dream or a vision ended up connecting with chapter 1 of the story. We also never find out how it connects with chapter 1, but we can only assume it's because of the very strange form of time travel introduced in the last chapter, but more on that later. Eren informs Mikasa that the Marleyan War ended, and the war on Paradis and the worlds will happen soon. This means that their loved ones could die because they choose to escape and fulfill their selfish desires. It links back to chapter 122 where Eren asked Mikasa what she thought of him, where she said family, but later on she wonders what would have happened if she had answered differently and honestly, therefore making sense and connecting with chapter 138. How would Eren know this if it wasn't an alternative path or timeline? We know from chapter 139 that Eren was in the paths and going through memories and time. This makes it very strange, since 139 shows us that there was only ever one path, with Mikasa being the key, and he chose to follow that path, and this world he's living in can't be real. Eren spent the remaining years of his life with Mikasa and died by the curse of Ymir in 138, which also doesn't make sense because this was a memory and within the past. Time does not work the same in the past as it does in the outside world, just as Zeke experienced in 137 as he traveled throughout years of time, and other people confirmed it in the paths as well. This gets even stranger when you consider that the Founding Titan cannot manipulate the memories of Ackermans, yet he can show her a memory that doesn't exist? If he's creating a memory and showing it to her, that is memory manipulation, and in turn breaks his own rule he established for the Ackermans. This is along with her lines in chapter 139 where she says she knows everyone else had their memories manipulated. It just creates some very strange gray area where there could easily be some breaking of his own logic. It goes even further when you consider that everyone else knew instantly that they were in the world of the paths, such as Armin, Zeke, and even Ymir back in season 2 of the show. Why did Mikasa not know where she was? And if she had been in a long dream, which this also ties back to chapter 1 of the manga, but it doesn't make sense unless this was actually real. One principle when writing a story is Chekhov's law, which some of you may know as Chekhov's gun. Chekhov's law is a concept in writing where you should not include irrelevant elements, and you should only include what's absolutely necessary to the story. I am bringing this up because we also get no explanation for Mikasa's headaches, which is an odd writing choice since Mikasa's headaches were introduced in the very first chapter of the story. This is an instance of breaking Chekhov's law, especially since her headaches were sprinkled throughout the story and in very important parts of it. I understand there are interpretations of what her headaches are, but those are just that, interpretation. We have to believe that Eren was causing the headaches because he kept trying to delete her memories and change them. But why would he want to do that if the memory in 138 with him informing her about everything is what caused Mikasa to gain the resolve to kill him? We feel like this should have been elaborated on. If Eren admitted this or this was explained, it would have created more emotional impact to those past events in the series. Speaking of Mikasa, something that ends up being left really open-ended and is surprisingly controversial is Eren x Mikasa. I'd like to preface that Attack on Titan has never had romance as a prevalent theme in its story, which again is what makes its introduction and last chapter really jarring for most fans. I'm not against any kind of shipping, nor are we biased. We just want the core structure and themes to be upheld in its finale. Now in chapter 139, Eren mentions he wants Mikasa to always love him and to never love another man. On first read, this seemed especially strange since it contradicts what Eren said in the very last chapter, which was that he wanted Mikasa to be free of him, abandon her scarf, and to move on when he died. You can argue this is a humanistic side of Eren wanting to vent before he dies, which we have no problem with at all. But it does make readers view previous chapters completely differently from now on. As we know, in the back of Eren's mind, he was always thinking about Mikasa after kissing Historia's hand and learning the truth. This is strange when you consider Eren outright outright denies Mikasa many times in the story, and he really does not like her babying him. Why would Eren reveal that he loves her now when he showed no signs of interest throughout the story? He had 6 years to tell Mikasa how he felt, and this isn't counting the years that happened for the time skip. We have to use this contrived plot of 138 to defend this, which is not a good thing, because Eren could have told Mikasa in his vision that he loves her, but he never tells her. We could talk about how Eren saying he never wants Mikasa to be free of him breaks his ideals of wanting his friends to live long, happy lives, which means he wants Mikasa to mourn his death since he knows he will die, which we see 3 years later that she is still mourning his death. But what's more important is how this last chapter attempts to make Eren x Mikasa canon. Isayama never intended for these two to actually become a couple ever, and we've seen in interviews that he himself states they have a familial bond. In an interview with Gekken Shingeki no Kyojin after the release of the 3rd volume of the manga, Isayama stated the following: "It is quite generic that a heroine is usually a woman who motivates a man. However, I don't really like that way of thinking. There was a time when my head actually filled up the idea of Mikasa turning that character archetype around. That is the reason that she became a strong woman who excels at combat. For Eren, rather than a lover, Mikasa's presence is more like a mother to him. The love towards a mother is considered precious. However, at the same time, there are annoying parts as well. Just like towards one's actual mother, Eren will start to grow up one day when he becomes independent, moving away from Mikasa. I might draw this scene one day. Mikasa fulfilling a mother-like role to Eren makes sense, since throughout most of the story she does act like his mom, and it makes sense she would take this position after their mother's death. So why introduce them as lovers when Isayama himself contradicts his own interpretation of his own story? The two's familiar relationship can be furthered when in chapter 121, Grisha referred to Mikasa as his daughter, and in the Lost Girls manga, someone says Eren and Mikasa look just like siblings. Even in Mikasa's character description in volume 1 of the manga, Isayama wrote she loved Eren as a brother and refused to let anything get in the way of protecting him. It is with all this evidence, along with how 3/4 of the Historia subplot was written, that Eren x Mikasa was not the original intention of Isayama, the creator of Attack on Titan. However, we would like to say Mikasa killing Eren at the end of the story does make sense. Isayama also said in an interview with Gekken that Mikasa's growth probably involves separation from Eren. By separation, I mean she might not be able to return to that original girl that she used to be in childhood. He even goes on to say that as a male manga author, the idea of Mikasa's life only being about Eren is pitiful. The story tries to tell us that Mikasa would let go of her love for Eren when she killed him, and through his death would achieve what Ymir never could. This refers to Ymir being a slave to toxic love, since her relationship with King Fritz was never seen to be a happy one. The story ending through Eren and Mikasa is also poetic, since this story started with the two of them in chapter 1. It is with these interviews and evidence from the manga that when Mikasa continues to be attached to Eren and mourns his death 3 years later that it does not make thematic sense or fit in line with the story of Attack on Titan at all. You should also know that Isayama changed the original ending of the series to the one he thought would suit its newfound popularity. Since the final chapter, Kodansha has confirmed volume 34 of Attack on Titan will be released with 2 versions, one with the current ending and one with a new chapter 138 and new chapter 139. What I think this all means is that Isayama decided to make Eren x Mikasa canon for the ending to make the shippers happy, since this ship was one of the most popular in the fandom. Isayama has been noted to read the subreddits and Twitter threads for his series, so changing the ending for its newfound popularity does make sense. However, it making sense for popularity's sake doesn't make it good.
One plot device I know every fan of Attack on Titan can agree is questionable and objectively bad writing is Ymir Fritz's character. The flaws she brought to the entire story with the revelations from chapter 139 are pretty obvious. Ymir's conclusion came so out of left field that we're literally breaking our necks for it to make cohesive sense, especially with how much emphasis the manga gave her in multiple important chapters that shaped the skeleton of the story. For example, looking back at chapters 119 through 135, the relationship between Ymir and Eren was highlighted to be an important foreshadowing, especially since the titles of chapter 1 and chapter 122 were complementary. I mean, it's not even the visual imagery or dialogue now, guys, it's even the chapter titles that are indicating a connection spanning over 2,000 years. The one chapter we received Ymir's backstory in chapter 122, the entirety of her story is about suffering under abuse, having no free will due to slavery, and being forced into things which rippled 2,000 years later to the cast we love. There is nothing to help support the notion within chapter 139 that Ymir is in love with King Fritz. This twist left a bitter taste in everybody's mouth. I mean, when you first read chapter 139, you see Eren stating Ymir was in love with Karl Fritz. Now, when I saw the name Karl, I was like, wait, what? Carl Fritz, the 145th king and the dude that made the vow? That makes no sense. Then I realized, oh shit, let me read this again. Oh, the ancient king from 2000 years ago. His name was Carl Fritz too, before we just knew him as King Fritz. What's the point of Isayama even doing that? I don't get it. Why did he do that? It caused confusion for no reason. I know that's a nitpick, but I just wanted to mention that. Yeah. Furthermore, why did Isayama use visual imagery in chapter 135 regarding the pigs and fences once again? To reinforce to readers to believe it's about breaking the walls and one's idea to gain freedom, as Ymir could see herself as cattle just like the pigs, but she was a good girl that fought differently, that sought to free them from their slaughter to a tyrannical king, metaphorically speaking of herself and the wider society. I mean, what's the point of chapter 122 and Historia's parallel of calling Ymir a good girl, going against how the world views her as the devil that is the origin of all hatred and chaos in the world? This very same chapter is when we learn her backstory with the precognition to believe Historia's words and Isayama's storytelling. We saw Historia break the Reese curse, which made Eren realize that this is what he needs to do. This is why Eren stated she's the girl who saved him that day, the worst girl in the world. Go look back at that cave scene. We saw Eren not wanting to live in his nihilism. Then he realized that he must live for himself, just like Historia decided to do. Isayama stated in interviews that this is when Eren realized that everything must be done for his own good, which gives reason to why Eren let people like Sasha and Haj get killed, since he must keep moving forward to see the end result and he cannot change the events. This links back to Ymir Fritz, because you have to look at how every event of Attack on Titan is interlinked in this huge chain, and why chapter 139 has undone the chain, making everything confusing and out of order. The philosophy that Historia explained to Eren, she gained it from her best friend Ymir, the person that taught her to live for herself. I know people would like to argue that we are seeing parallels and dots that do not exist or connect, but this isn't the case and can be debunked. Historia's philosophy definitely got imbued into Eren's character once she saved his life. Credit to Violet's Magic on Twitter for doing the work. Take a look at this image of different manga panels connecting to one another. Historia even mentioned, I think humanity's the problem, we should just let the Titans destroy mankind, and even refers back to Ymir Fritz. I can't be a good girl, and I don't want to be a god. Every single famous quote of Historia is repeated by Eren to Ymir Fritz when he meets her in the paths, where he states to Ymir that she should put an end to the world, that she has been waiting for him for over 2000 years and led him there, that Ymir should finally use her free will for once after undoing her chains of listening to royal blood. Eren even repeats the notion that you're no slave, you're no god, you're just a human being. So at this point, you cannot really deny the blatant foreshadowing and storytelling that fans saw, and how chapter 139 was a slap in the face.
Ah! You slapped me, you monkey!
Marry me.
Now, during chapters 119 to 122, we are given the backstory of Ymir, right? Whilst alive, we learned Ymir was raped, used, and cannibalized by King Fritz to his selfish desire in expanding the Eldian Empire for power and wealth. We are led to believe Ymir was mentally and physically abused to the point where the mentality of a slave was ingrained in her. This would have made sense why she stayed in the paths and obeyed the will of the royal family. If Ymir was in love, then she should not have chosen death when she got spared by a traitor to save King Fritz. Even the king himself admits that the wound she suffered is not bad enough to kill her. However, she does end up dying, and we all saw this as a tragic gateway of freedom from her misery. Think about it, you have to question yourself and ask, how did Ymir Fritz lose the will to live and die by a spear if it wasn't for oppression and the theme of wanting freedom? If Ymir was in love with King Fritz, why didn't she continue to serve him? We were told that the healing factor of Titans is linked to the will to live. This is a fact. So how did she lose the will to live if she actually loved him? That's an oxymoron and therefore objectively bad writing. Why would Ymir decide to die and go to the paths and enslave the world for 2000 years just to listen to him? In fact, we see her doing it again with Zeke Yeager in chapter 122. She was almost about to listen to Zeke's euthanization plan until Eren broke the chains literally, metaphorically and symbolically to stop it. So now, do we have to believe that this scene was done for cheap dramatization? Oh my god, bruh! So wouldn't it make more sense that she lost the will to live because she was fed up with a tyrant but was a small child, brainwashed and afraid, so she couldn't let go of the chains until Eren came and freed her by understanding her heart. This is then highlighted when Eren says she isn't a god and just a human. Ymir Fritz is a plot device. Her whole character didn't even speak once in the entire manga. She was someone that was used to move the plot forward and represent the cruelty of power held in the wrong hands and the oppression that it causes. Eren was meant to juxtapose King Fritz, not be his representation. Ymir is a walking plot hole and hypocrite because she goes against everything she was meant to represent. She in the end is indeed the devil instead of the victim. She forced Eren to do the rumbling in hindsight and forced Mikasa to make a decision to kill him. She enslaved the world for 2000 years due to something unexplainable and what 99% of the fandom cannot even relate to or sympathize with, instead of the other theme regarding freedom and going against oppression and racism, which 99.9% of the fandom, no, not even 99.9%, 100% of the fandom can sympathize with and defend. So thank you to Claydoll1091 from Reddit for this thread. He puts it pretty well. It is absurd for Eren to suggest to Ymir and readers, did you lead me here to tell me how you have been waiting 2000 years for Mikasa? If he meant so, then he shouldn't have said it ends now in that very same chapter, because it hadn't ended yet at that moment without Mikasa. Also, if Mikasa and the agony of love were the key overall, Eren should not have mentioned you're no slave, you're no god, because none of these mattered for the concepts of obsession and love. Another point I want you to understand is, why is Eren parasailing Historia's words where she stated the same thing to Eren in his nihilism and lowest point of his life where he wanted to die? This is how Ymir Fritz felt 2000 years ago, which made the spear kill her, right? This sentiment is perpetuated once again when Eren does this for Ymir, who was suffering and going through the same feelings Eren was. So no, fans are not connecting dots that do not exist when there are clear parallels in everything that is being unfolded. Why would Eren speak the exact same words as Historia did if it wasn't for the thematic nuance of Eren being the only one able to understand Ymir's suffering, and so she waited 2000 years for him to arrive and undo the chains? That's why she stopped listening to Royal Blood and didn't listen to Zeke Yeager. In fact, our analysis is agreed upon by the creator of Attack on Titan himself, and he reaffirmed the beliefs of fans in regards of his storytelling. Isayama stated in the interview that when Eren realized that he had his destined path because of his father, at that point he could no longer lie to himself or anyone else, and thus felt, I shouldn't be living in this world, and that was pretty much his situation. However, it was Historia, when she ended the curse of Reese, he decided that he must do the same. Everything must be done for his own good, and when you think about things this way, it's easier to understand Eren. So even the creator himself is telling his readers that Eren is a selfish person, he's listening to Historia and she is the one that saved him, he's embodying her character and her philosophy. I just don't understand how people can try to say to fans that are upset, you're connecting something that doesn't exist. Then why is Isayama lying to his own fans in interviews? That doesn't make any sense. Why is he telling us to think in a certain manner of the story? So as you can see, the author of Attack on Titan is stating that Eren realized everything that must be done for his own good, not for the sake of others, unless Isayama is being as meta as Eren was with the events that unfolded. Like, are you telling me that Isayama was lying for years upon years just like Eren, even in interviews regarding his own interpretation of his story and characters? Like, take a look at the following panels. You clearly see that Eren believes Ymir has been waiting for him, not Mikasa. It is made clear to the readers that Eren is the one that understands Ymir's heart, whilst Zeke did not. In chapter 137, it even reminds us of this, where Zeke mentioned that even hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years he spent in the paths, he still couldn't figure out Ymir's desire, whilst Eren could understand something he could not. Eren understood the pain and loneliness Ymir felt while serving as a slave, as he himself felt that way in his nihilism, but he kept pushing forward for freedom. When Eren says it ends now, he is referring to Ymir's exploitation and suffering by the Eldian Empire. She was forced to create titans to fuel their conquest. We then come to understand that Ymir goes along with the rumbling because of Eren's speech giving her the liberation and love, something she sought her whole life. Eren finally embraced her and she makes a distressed expression connection just like him when he kissed Historia's hand. Ymir has been told that she is free to unleash her suffering upon the world that wronged her, instead of following the notion of the royal bloodline. I mean, why is she about to listen to Zeke otherwise in the same chapter, if she knew the plan all along revealed in chapter 139, which was Mikasa being chosen by her and Eren was on the destined path? This doesn't make any objective sense other than the fact for dramatization, which is cheap.
That don't make no sense.
Ymir's second desire is made painfully obvious to the readers. Not only does she want to be free from her chains, but she wants love and to experience a human connection. This explains why she stayed in the past, to try to form such a connection with all her descendants, waiting for one of them to come and save her whilst understanding her heart, which was Eren. Thus the whole notion of chapter 1's title connecting to 122. Armin theorized this himself in chapter 137, stating, "I think it's because the founder Ymir wants to be connected." This would explain why Ymir cried at Eren's speech whilst he embraced her, as this was finally achieved and someone understood her suffering. Why would Ymir cry at Eren's embracing speech if she was in love with Carl Fritz the whole time? She should be happy that Eren has kept moving forward to be a sacrificial lamb and her fetish to be fulfilled, destroying that bot. We are left with zero clues that Ymir was in love with King Fritz, whilst a plethora of link chains point towards it being about freedom and a connection with her children, which is Eren's desire, not Mikasa's. If you boil down the events of Attack on Titan and how it started, the pill that you have to swallow is that it's not based upon the idea of destroying oppression and finding love with the whole idea of Ymir freeing animals to see how it felt like, but it's about destroying love and accepting that freedom is an illusion. This results in a dissatisfying conclusion to a masterpiece. We can't take away anything from this ending that has any meaningful impact to us. Why do you think so many fans have said they felt nothing when they read the chapter, or have stopped thinking about Attack on Titan and don't care about it anymore? When a masterpiece ends, it should be the opposite. You should remember it in a good manner and care about the message it gave you. Anyways, in chapter 139, when Eren states that he can't claim he understands the depths of Ymir's heart, it essentially retcons every interaction we saw Eren have with her. Lastly, another point I need to drive home, and shout out to MTN Drones for a very comprehensive Reddit post on this. Shout out to them. Shout out to everyone that made this video possible because it's so massive. But they stated in the thread, the notion that Ymir will end the Titan curse once she is free further reinforces how her character was retconned. Based on that logic, Ymir should have been able to end the curse back in chapter 122, as Eren had reached out and broken King Fritz's grasp over her. That's why she doesn't listen to royal blood anymore. Isayama realized this, so he decided to change Ymir's motivations in the last chapter for the Mikasa reveal to make sense, even though Eren had clearly freed her before chapter 139. It is ridiculous for Eren to have suggested, "Did you lead me here to tell me you have been waiting 2000 years for Mikasa?" This is all thrown out with the revelation of chapter 139. We have to believe that Ymir was a victim of her own doing, and she was indeed the devil that enslaved the whole human race for 2000 years with the curse of Ymir, as she is the final villain. She is the one that caused Eren to be on the path he did and forced Mikasa to kill her lover for her own selfish satisfaction to let go of her love. Also, I know people are going to have defense for her saying that she has Stockholm Syndrome, but this just isn't the case. We cannot use this as an excuse to defend how Ymir was in love with the king. With Stockholm Syndrome, hostages or abuse victims may come to sympathize with their captors. This is the opposite of the fear, terror and disdain that may be expected from the victims in this situation. Ymir never showed happiness or sympathy for the king in any given situation we were shown. King Fritz never treated her well for her to gain Stockholm Syndrome. He treated her like shit. In actuality, we saw fear and disconnect from herself, like a turtle hiding in a shell. Ymir was never a hostage or captive either. She had godlike powers that let her conquer the world. She could have easily killed him at any point of time by squishing him. It was not Stockholm Syndrome, guys. You need to research what that means, bruh. Also, speaking of the hallucigenia, what even is this thing? We are introduced to it again in chapter 137, 2 chapters before the ending, and before we learn anything about something that made this entire story happen, it just dies. The hallucigenia is introduced as possibly being from outer space, and with there being multiple of them alive, as we see in the introduction. It then attaches itself to Ymir, turns her into a giant, and then upon her death we are meant to believe that it creates a pocket dimension for Ymir, free of both time and space. The worm also has the power to connect an entire lineage of people and give them the power to also turn into giants, as this was Ymir's way of protecting herself according to Zeke, which, by the way, are we not going to question how Zeke had the knowledge he did in chapter 137 on this ancient creature? Ymir Fritz doesn't even speak speak, so how did Zeke even have this information? There are a lot of loose ends and it's rushed, making for an absolutely bewildered fanbase when Attack on Titan ended. Another factor I would like to point out on why Ymir Fritz is a walking contradiction in the whole story is that we have to point out that this hallucigenia was sentient and wanted to survive. It's the final villain with her. Remember when it pops out of Eren's head as its own entity and turns people into titans? This at first makes it appear as if getting out of Eren was the entire goal so they could kill it, since it's very clear that it wants to go back to him, right? However, we never really know for sure. All we know is that it has a mind of its own and it survives a nuclear explosion, but it dives off screen when Eren dies. We believe that the worm was the curse, and that was Eren's big brain intention of letting it out of the Titan so that it could die and therefore destroy the concept of Titans in the entire world. But this turns out to not be the case, and we get a worse excuse that Ymir was in control of everything the whole time because she wanted to see her simulation with Mikasa and Eren completed. This in itself makes no sense, since the logic behind this is stupid. Eren believing he used free will and his own ideology to gain freedom made sense for the overall structure of the story. But now when you break things down holistically and realize Mikasa was chosen the whole time by Ymir Fritz, you have to question yourself, how does she have the knowledge? Ymir Fritz is basically a four-dimensional being looking at three-dimensional humans, as she can perceive the past, present and future. So if she chose Mikasa as the destined one that is capable of ending her curse due to her knowledge, then what was the point of enacting the destruction of the world for 2000 years? With the storytelling we have now, it means that Ymir already had preemptive information that Mikasa would succeed. So why wasn't the knowledge of the future Ymir possessed enough for her to end the curse? She knew that humanity is great and is capable of destroying her attachment of the love she has for King Fritz. It just makes Ymir not seem like a victim, but indeed the devil and selfish. The time travel aspect of the show has been completely ruined. The hallucigenia does not make any sense in itself, as we see it operating on its own. And without Ymir and Eren, I could have seen it attach itself to a new host like it did originally with Ymir. Why didn't it just do that? But instead, it just disappears with no explanation. The anime will probably fix this, as well as the additional pages that have already been announced. I think all of us would have had no issue if the origin of Titans were not revealed any further beyond Ymir having it attached to her. But just throwing it into the story in one chapter before the ending just feels like such an odd writing choice. I cannot stress how bad it is to be introduced to the entire reason this mythos exists and know nothing about it. We know nothing about the hallucigenia worm, but it got killed off screen for the big last chapter. It felt so anticlimactic. Now let's talk about Historia's subplot.
Proceeding to Historia's baby subplot, it's shown in a very minor fashion and kept very purposely ambiguous, like it's some kind of giant secret. There have been many mentions and nods to Historia and Eren becoming a couple throughout the series. There were some panels used throughout, like this one for example, where Eren is showing emotion being in Historia's company and they practically have mutual interest of wanting to be around each other, as they confess they feel normal and happy when they do. We later see Historia and Eren having a conversation shown in chapter 130, where Historia comes to terms with being turned into a Titan. She'd be turned into a Titan due to Zeke arriving in the near future to Para D, and they'd have Historia inherit his Beast Titan so she could help activate the Founding Titan. Eren is shown to be against this, as he says they need to fight against the military police to avoid this fate of hers, but Historia says that there is no other way. She tells him that since they defended her and saved her back around the time when she first became queen, and she had the worst girl in the world moment, that was enough for her, and that she is content with this happening to her. Eren explains that this might be fine for her, but it's not fine for him. He tells her about this plan of his for the rumbling, which was mentioned earlier in the video. You know, the part where she tells him that the entire world isn't their enemy, and that he says that they are. He tells her that her sacrifice of becoming a Titan is not necessary since he plans to go through with a full rumbling, making it completely unnecessary for her to have children to inherit the Titan powers because there would be no outside threats. This further perpetuates the theme of children not going to war and how it encapsulated the subplot as a whole. Hints were left for readers throughout many of the characters in the story, such as Anya Capone explaining that children are the future, and Sasha's father explaining how the children need to be taken out of the forest. Otherwise, otherwise the same history of misery is going to repeat itself over and over again. Eren understood this, and that's why this subplot had so much meaning to it, because they were going to break this burdening of the next generation. There's also some possible theorizing that Eren is this person that came over to visit Historia when she was in the barn talking to Farmer-kun. Historia very clearly did not look very happy, and this furthers that Eren was the one to impregnate her by his own hands. Historia reluctantly goes through with Eren's genocide route, leading back to her saying she is the worst girl in the world. This all ties back to her promise to Ymir, where she said she would live for herself, and not for other people, which directly goes with Eren's ideology of everyone being free upon birth. More on this in a minute or so. It's after this that we see Historia ask if she should have a child, which then has us cut to Eren invading Marley. There's underlying subtext to these panels that suggest Eren's motivation to fully go through with this plan is Historia and her will to have a child, which is pro-natalist. He'd go through with this plan so her kid wouldn't have to suffer the consequences of becoming a tool used by the military, or face the threat of being killed by the outside world. Isayama goes even as far to show us when Zeke mentions Mikasa's love for Eren, his thought process immediately goes to Historia. There's no way this is a coincidence at all. The remainder of the Eren and Historia conversation from 130 was then cut short, and this makes it heavily seem it be addressed or visited later. The last chapter would have been the perfect place to address this conversation, and give us this answers to this long ambiguous pregnancy of hers. There are also a lot of themes in the story to help support that Eren would be the father, such as Eren and Historia surpassing their fathers and not burdening the sins of the current generation onto the next. The parallels with Historia also being Ymir or an angel, and Eren being the devil, it really does feel like Eren would end up being the father. All the foreshadowing and hints were there for it, and it even goes with other thematics in the story. If this baby ended up being Eren's, this would directly oppose Zeke's ideology. Zeke believes all Eldians should not be born out of his own hatred for his existence and disgust for the lack of freedom he feels due to Marley oppression. His euthanization plan is a way of ending the cycle of hatred. Eren believes that people born into this world are special, as his mother taught him this with her famous line of "because he was born into this world." And Eren believes that everyone is free from birth to do what they desire. Isayama also states in an interview that, quote, "The rival who stands in the way of the main character is the form that the main character should never become, or the brother-like existence that he must surpass. I want to make Zeke a character who is in that position." In this quote, Isayama is referring to Zeke, and how he wants Zeke to be the Eren he was never supposed to be. And again, why would Historia propose to Eren? Like, why would she want to get Eren's acknowledgement of her having a child and proposition after hearing that Eren intends to murder millions of people? These theories and story beats are also even furthered by Norse mythology, which Attack on Titan is heavily based on. Ymir exists in Norse myth and reincarnates after the Battle of Ragnarok into a human baby. This Battle of Ragnarok is actually a very big parallel to the Rumbling, and so with this logic and the foreshadowing given between Eren, who has the founder, and Historia, who has royal blood, it looks like Ymir would reincarnate, especially since the paths disappear and all the Eldians move on. All of the evidence points to the father being Eren Yeager, since it follows themes, motivations, and key details that are sprinkled throughout the story. This would also make Historia's character have some relevance and purpose besides her randomly being sidelined for like 30 chapters, and would make the infamous panel that was supposed to be the last saying "you are free" make so much sense, since the next generation of people, his child, would be free. It is why with all of this evidence that Eren loving Mikasa and Historia's subplot not mattering at all, that this makes no sense. We are never revealed who the father of this child is, and we never know if this is Ymir's reincarnation or not. All of these themes, subtextual scenes, and evidence are completely thrown out the window and entirely ignored in chapter 139. I mean, why would Historia lie about the due date of the birth of her child otherwise? She lied to Levi and all of the others. Originally we thought it was because she needed to, so that Eren wouldn't be the suspect, since it would line up pretty suspiciously. Historia's pregnancy conveniently falls to the date of the Rumbling, as was shown again in chapter 134. As we see why it's happening, she is giving birth. This is to remind the readers that this is a very important plot point and that we should keep it in our minds towards the ending of the series. If you say that the pregnancy subplot was never supposed to be important, you're not entirely correct, since there also were some revelations that came from it, such as Yelena was never the one to talk to Historia and make her hit up Farmer-kun. It was actually Eren who talked to her to talk to the farmer. Instead, all of this leads up to a farmer getting royal pussy for throwing rocks at her as a kid, and Historia visually upset in every panel with him in the current day. Like, just look at her face when her pregnancy is introduced. It's hard to believe that Historia married the farmer out of love rather than objectively based, which goes against her surpassing her selfish mother and her selfish father. To take all these events as a red herring is really disappointing. Historia as a character ends up being completely irrelevant after becoming queen in season 3. This is extremely ironic in itself, as Isayama noted in interviews that she was one of his favorite characters. Some people may call us to delusional, but why was Historia's baby one of the biggest points of discussion in the community almost everywhere? I mean, look at the video on Historia's child on this channel. It almost has 500,000 views. Everyone wanted to know who the father is. The disappointment does not stem from the fact that Eren x Historia doesn't happen, but rather that nothing happens at all and Historia's character is sidelined after becoming queen. She is not really relevant at all in the last half of the story or for the last 30 chapters. Now we're going to talk about a lot of instances of plot points being introduced that end up not mattering at all. And to do this, we're going to be talking quite a lot about Chekhov's Law. I talked about this a little bit earlier, but in case you don't remember, it is a writing concept that says irrelevant elements in a story should not be there and you should only have what is completely necessary to the overarching plot. Due to how quickly the ending happened, Isayama unfortunately breaks Chekhov's Law of writing a lot. And there are instances of real plot points not being taken into account or addressed. For example, back in season 3 of the anime during the taking of Shiganshina, Reiner had his head blown in half and should have resulted in his death. This is one of the many times Reiner should have died, to be honest. However, Isayama introduces a new power of the Titan Shifter, where they can shift their conscience into their Titan's body to stay alive. This concept had never been explored or introduced before this, so naturally it felt it had some purpose being introduced into the story and it would be significant later on. The introduction of shifting consciousness also makes Ymir Fritz dying make no sense, besides the fact that she lost the will to live and wanted to not serve the king anymore, who was treating her like a tool. I mean, she had the power of the Titan. She could have transformed upon being hit with that spear, but she chose not to. This conscience shifting power is shown, and then it's literally never used again. The introduction of this feels like a complete ass pull for the plot armor Titan, and it seems to only exist to keep Reiner alive in this one instance. This is breaking Chekhov's Law by introducing something that is literally never used again. Around halfway through season 4, we found out that Mikasa was one of the few remaining descendants of the clan known as the Azumabito. The Azumabito are one of the ruling families of Hizuru, so Mikasa being found out to be the last of their clan was a very big deal. However, this plot point ended up going nowhere. Mikasa ends up talking to Kiyomi in chapter 111 about how she's an Eldian, but after this, we never hear about her family relations anymore. You could argue it strengthened relations between Paradis and Hizuru, but the Azumabito already wanted to work with Paradis since they were allies in the past, on top of the fact that Paradis had real crystals that no other land had. Mikasa being royalty really did not matter too much in the end. All it ended up doing is furthering that Mikasa was a Mary Sue. And Mary Sue is a character that is extremely talented and gifted in many ways that she just naturally gets without any real growth for it. She's an Ackerman, which means she's ridiculously overpowered and has Titan powers as a human. She's also royalty, so that's cool. And she ends up being the chosen one from Ymir by the end of the story. Speaking of season 4, Eren's attack on Marley was big and a massive stepping stone in Attack on Titan's new and dark direction. We were shown Eren's new morbid convictions as he attacks the country and eats another Titan shifter. But in hindsight, it feels rather pointless. Eren uses the power of the Warhammer Titan twice, once to escape prison and another in his standoff against Reiner and Porco. After these two instances, the Warhammer power is never seen or used again after chapter 120. A lot of people theorize that Eren was remotely controlling the rumbling due to the Warhammer having the power to remotely control its Titan, but this ended up not being the case. In fact, Eren never uses this asset of the Warhammer, which makes its introduction feel even more pointless. Why would you introduce this power of remotely controlling Titans through the Warhammer if you're never going to use it again? The Warhammer is probably one of the coolest powers with a Titan, and it's sad that it never got used at all. I don't know, man, it feels really underwhelming, especially with how you consider that Eren seemed to have the power of all 9 Titans at the ending, as we see him turn into a colossal Titan, but he just never uses any of the other ones. Now let's go a bit down the line to once the rumbling is activated, and focus on chapter 134. Annie's female Titan is mentioned to have the ability to take and absorb attributes of other Titans, which I suppose is an attempt at explaining how she could crystallize her body, although I assumed Annie must have eaten one of those crystal canisters like Eren did in season 3. But this doesn't seem to be the case anymore. Actually, you know, while we're talking about it, what was the point of these canisters to make people crystallize when they're introduced with no explanation? Eren eats one and then it's never talked about again. Anyways, her being able to absorb other powers of Titans seemed to be foreshadowing to something, but it's just brought up and is never built upon. Instead, Falco, the inheritor of the Jaw Titan, learns to fly. This has absolutely zero explanation, on top of the fact Falco masters his Titan in rather like an hour or two. We see through Eren that it took him a full season to even remotely master his Titan, and it took him a few other seasons to master hardening. It's because of Eren's strong will that he masters the power of his Titan, and as we see in Marley, he could transform into the Attack Titan 4 times, more than most people could. Falco masters his Jaw Titan with no training, and he can suddenly turn into a flying Titan? I understand they try to suggest he can do this due to Zeke's spinal fluid, but that doesn't really help it make much sense. No shifter should be able to have two full abilities of very different Titan. With Annie, she was able to have small properties of other Titan, or apparently she is anyways. They don't really elaborate on the qualities that she gained through being able to absorb other Titan powers. Falco has the power of the Jaw Titan, and he seems to have the full power of the Beast Titan, and he can fly because of it, although Zeke is still alive, which means he should not have Beast Titan powers. Isayama does not really even attempt to explain how Falco can fly, and his Titan disappears just as suddenly as appeared due to the hallucigenia dying.
Now let's speak of the final topic, the final few pages of the finale of Attack on Titan. What happened to the world realistically after the rumbling? Now, the way that the world ends up does not make much sense. The rumbling titans walked over nearly everything on the planet. They destroyed forests, towns, and so many more things. We even see these titans swimming in the ocean. It is because of this that realistically the entire rest of the world should be dead. Let me explain. The rumbling killed 80% of the world, which means 80% of the world should be full of rotting corpses. We know from real life events and pandemics that this many corpses would lead to the spread of diseases and plagues. This would result into a situation like the Black Plague existing in a world like this. We can apply this real life logic to Attack on Titan because besides the bit about titans and the paths, the entire rest of the world is grounded in a very real logic so that it can be believable to the audience. It's because of this that diseases should be running rampant and the world should be starving. The rumbling should have destroyed crops and ruined the soil of any more crops to be planted, which means that any farms outside of Paradise will not be able to sustain any growth. Not only this, but again, we saw the titans swimming through the ocean. This means that they killed thousands and thousands of fish when they swam because of how hot they are. We've seen Hange catch fire just from coming near them, for God's sake. So with this logic, all of the fish near the titans in the water would have died. The rumbling titan likely also would have wiped out tons of livestock since they stomped the entire world. So with this, the world realistically after the rumbling, especially 3 years into it, should be starving and full of disease. Look at the pandemic we have now. This all started because some guy decided to eat a goddamn brat, bruh. Anything can happen. The smallest of things causes a pandemic. Absolute power will always corrupt. Eren just became the new devil of history instead of Ymir Fritz. Eren did not seek with his Zero Requiem since the Eldians from here on out will most likely be feared and hated, just restarting the cycle of hatred that ancient Eldians started. Historia confirmed that she thinks Eren may be right, that conflict will never end. Considering how Paradise idolized Eren so much, they would likely incorporate his ideology into their lives, meaning they will continue to have war to achieve freedom. Moving on to our next point, what happened to Yelena? There is also the absence of a character in the ending of the story. Yelena became a crucial character towards the end of the manga, as she helped to connect Paradise with the rest of the world and help them jump through time in terms of technology. She also led to Zeke and Eren connecting to activate the founding titan, although they didn't go through with her euthanization plan. She was heavily involved in their attack against Marley and all of the military police becoming titans. But after the rumbling, she is never seen again. This is especially strange because the character introduced as a right-hand man, Onion Kopan, is relevant and around 3 years after the rumbling happening. But Yelena completely disappears and isn't even in the last chapter. Rico and Hitch, two side characters that fulfilled their purpose, both return in the final chapter. Not only that, but Sasha's family returns too. Hell, even all the scouts come back in the smoke of the hallucigenia. But Yelena? She's gone! I would have liked to see what the hell happened to her after she found out Zeke died since she worshipped him so much. But I guess we'll never know because it was rushed and the anime will cover it. Anyway guys, this was a gigantic video essay and it's now out of the way. Hopefully you guys understood our points. There was much more to say regarding even more plot points such as Reiner's character being rushed and how every character ended up anticlimactically ending with so many loose ends. This essay was going to be like even 20 minutes longer, but you know, I'm tired. Hunter's tired. We took a week to create this video. It ended up being 20,000 words on top of that. So please smash the like button. Please support us. And I'm gonna guess that the anime is going to fix some of the points that we stated in this video. But now you understand why fans are upset about the ending. And with that, I'll see you next time covering the same topic when the anime makes its version. Bye bye.